Welcome to Connect at 51, the online Bible study from C3 Church Manhattan. For those of you joining us for the first time, watch the video until you see a question screen like this, then pause and share your answer with the group, then continue. And so the introduction question is this: describe a great party that you've attended. Today we'll be exploring a parable that was told in the context of a great banquet. We begin in Luke 5 verse 27. After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name of Levi sitting at his tax booth. "Follow me," Jesus said to him, and Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Then Levi held a great banquet for Jesus at his house, and a large crowd of tax collectors and others were eating with them. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who belonged to their sect complained to his disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus answered them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." They said to him, "John's disciples often fast and pray, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours go on eating and drinking." Jesus answered them, "Can you make the friends of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. In those days they will fast." He told them this parable: "No one tears a piece out of a new garment to patch an old one, otherwise they will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, new wine must be poured into new wineskins, and no one, after drinking old wine, wants the new, for they say the old is better." So what do you think the Pharisees are really upset about here? The Pharisees and teachers of the law were the elites in this society. In a time where religion was such a big part of life, these people commanded respect, power, and social standing. On the other hand, tax collectors were considered traitors and cheats. So when Levi holds a great banquet with all the other tax collectors, it would have been scandalous to the Pharisees thinking that Jesus and his disciples would associate with them. You see, Jesus was an up-and-coming influencer in these religious circles, so the Pharisees probably thought that they should be hanging out with them rather than the tax collectors. So given that they are probably coming out of a place of wounded pride and being snubbed, they attacked both the disciples and Jesus for eating with these sinners. So how does Jesus counter these attacks? First, Jesus describes himself as a doctor to explain who they're associating with, that is, the sick. Then he uses the metaphor of a wedding to describe his time on earth, where he is the bridegroom and the disciples are the guests at a wedding banquet. When he predicts a time that the bridegroom will be taken away from them and then it will be a time to fast, it seems that this answer is almost as much for his own disciples as it is to silence his critics. And it is at that point that Jesus tells the parables about clothes and wine. It's worth noting that Jesus uses parables to sometimes express difficult truths that people will often have a hard time accepting, but those that have the ears to hear will get it. So with that in mind, we'll take a closer look at the parable about wine, beginning with this thought: how is wine made, and why does new wine need to be placed in new wineskins? We all know that wine is made from the juice of grapes, and the key to making wine is fermentation. As it ferments, the sugars are consumed and turned into alcohol, but this process causes expansion. The new wine will gradually expand, and thus it needs to be placed in a new wineskin that will still have the capacity to stretch. An old wineskin can't stretch anymore, so it will burst and ruin both the wine and the wineskin. So to interpret this, it's necessary to determine what is the new and old wine referring to and who the old and new wineskin are. So what do you think this parable means? The most obvious way of reading this parable is to consider Jesus as the new wine and his disciples as the new wineskins that have the ability to stretch and grow as Jesus teaches them new things. The old wineskins are the Pharisees who are fixed in their ways and not willing to entertain anything new. The old wine is their rigid laws, rules, and rituals that they adhere to. And this parable answers the main issue that we explored earlier, which was why doesn't Jesus and the disciples party with the Pharisees? The real reason that he's not hanging out with them is that there's an incompatibility with the new covenant that he's bringing and the old covenant that they are religiously defending. The parable goes as far as saying that if Jesus was to try and teach these old wineskins, they literally wouldn't be able to handle it. As they say in A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth and it would ruin everything. So it seems clear in this analogy that we want to be the new wineskin. So how do you be a new wineskin instead of an old wineskin? Jesus concludes the parable by saying that the people who drink old wine will continue to stick with the familiar and comfortable rules and regulations that they're used to, saying that the old wine is better. So the first thing that we can learn here if we want to be a new wineskin is to stop drinking old wine. Isaiah 43 describes it with the following: "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." If you want to grow and stretch to what God has for you now, we must forget the former things and not dwell on the past. Only then can we see what new thing God has planned for us. This may mean letting go of old habits, old grudges, old preconceptions, and old beliefs that are safe and familiar. We need to be sensitive and open to what Jesus is doing now because it's always new, constantly surprising, and endlessly creative. So as we conclude, ask yourself this: what new thing is God doing in your world?